Have you ever felt that stomach-dropping sensation when you know something massive is about to explode, but you're powerless to stop it? That's exactly what's happening across the NHL right now, as three storied franchises teeter on the edge of seismic roster upheavals that could reshape the entire league landscape. The pressure cookers are whistling, the fuses are lit, and frankly, it's about time someone called out what everyone's whispering about in hockey circles. The Los Angeles Kings, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Pittsburgh Penguins aren't just contemplating minor tweaks to their lineups, they're staring down the barrel of franchise-altering decisions that will define their next decade. Each organization finds itself trapped between championship expectations and harsh salary cap realities, creating a perfect storm of desperation that's making general managers across the league salivate at potential opportunities. Los Angeles. When pressure becomes explosive, let's start with the Kings, because their situation perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with modern NHL team building. Nick Kypreos dropped a bombshell recently, revealing there's tremendous pressure on Los Angeles to win immediately following their front office shakeup that brought Ken Holland into the fold. This isn't just organizational impatience. This is President Luc Robitaille essentially putting a gun to Holland's head and demanding results? Think about the impossible position Holland finds himself in. He's inherited a veteran core that's running out of time, limited salary cap, flexibility that handcuffs every decision, and ownership expectations that seem completely disconnected from roster reality. The panic signing of Cody Checky to a big money deal screams desperation rather than strategic planning. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is how Holland's reputation for aggressive moves could either save or destroy the Kings' championship window. He's not known for half measures or conservative approaches, which means we're likely to see some shocking trade proposals coming out of Los Angeles in the coming months. The question isn't whether Holland will make big moves. It's whether those moves will elevate the Kings or accelerate their decline. Chris Johnston's insight that the Kings are maintaining flexibility for potential major free agents reveals another layer of this chess match. They're essentially betting that they can simultaneously compete now while positioning themselves for future opportunities. It's a high-wire act that rarely ends well in professional sports. Nashville's buyers? Rumours. When splash signings backfire, the Nashville Predators' summer spending spree looked impressive on paper. Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Skjei, and Steven Stamkos represent exactly the kind of veteran talent that playoff teams covet. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. According to Kypreos, the Predators might already be looking to flip one of these expensive acquisitions. Marchessault in particular has emerged as the most likely candidate for an early exit. Think about how insane this sounds. A team signs a proven goal scorer to a long-term deal in July and is already considering trading him before training camp ends. This isn't just poor planning. It's organizational chaos masquerading as strategic flexibility. Barry Trotz's aggressive roster reshaping approach has created a situation where Nashville has committed significant resources to players who may not fit their long-term vision. The Predators are essentially admitting that their summer strategy was flawed while simultaneously trying to convince other teams to bail them out of expensive mistakes. What this reveals about modern NHL team building is deeply troubling. Teams are making massive financial commitments based on short-term thinking, then scrambling to undo those decisions when reality sets in. Nashville's potential willingness to trade Marchessault represents everything that's broken about how franchises approach competitive windows. Toronto's blue line dilemma, the Marner fallout, continues. The Maple Leafs situation might be the most complex of all three franchises, primarily because they're still dealing with the aftershocks of losing Mitch Marner. According to insider reports, Toronto is seriously considering moving one of their defensemen, possibly Brandon Carlo, to address their forward depth issues. The Morgan release situation adds another layer of intrigue to this saga. While he would represent the biggest potential trade chip on Toronto's blue line, his no-trade clause creates complications that most fans don't fully appreciate. The fact that conversations have reportedly taken place about whether Riley would consider waiving that protection suggests the Leafs are more desperate than they're letting on publicly. Carlo's mixed chemistry with Riley makes him the logical trade candidate. But here's what makes this particularly interesting. The Leafs' recent additions of Dakota Joshua, Matias Maccelli, and Nicholas Roy improve their depth, but don't replace Marner's elite production. They're essentially trying to solve a Ferrari problem with Honda. Civic Parts. This approach reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how elite talent works in the NHL. You can't replace 90-point players with committee approaches, especially in playoff situations where star power becomes even more critical. Toronto's blue line shakeup feels like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic rather than addressing their core offensive deficiencies. Pittsburgh's Sidney Crosby circus. The rumor that won't dino NHL rumor roundup would be complete without addressing the Sidney Crosby speculation that continues to dominate hockey discourse. Despite Chris Johnston's repeated assertions that a trade feels unlikely, the rumors persist with teams like Montreal, Los Angeles, and Colorado reportedly maintaining interest. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is Crosby's apparent desire to finish his career alongside Evgeny Malkin. This loyalty factor creates both romantic appeal for hockey purists and practical complications for Pittsburgh's front office. They're essentially trapped by their own success, unable to fully rebuild while their franchise icons remain productive, but aging. Frank Saravalli's insights into Erik Karlsson's situation add another dimension to Pittsburgh's dilemma. If the Penguins retain salary to bring Karlsson's cap hit down to the $7 to $7.5 million range, teams like Carolina might show genuine interest. However, Kyle Dubas is reportedly asking premium prices for any of Karlsson, Brian Rust, or Rickard Rakell. This creates a classic NHL standoff where Pittsburgh needs to move expensive veterans to create flexibility, but refuses to accept market value returns for aging assets. Dubas seems to believe he can have his cake and eat it too, maintaining competitive relevance while extracting maximum value for declining players. The domino effect. Nobody's discussing what makes these three situations so compelling is how interconnected they could become. If the Kings make aggressive moves to satisfy ownership pressure, it could trigger responses from Toronto and Pittsburgh. If Nashville floods the market with expensive veterans, it could depress trade values for everyone else trying to move similar players. The salary cap creates artificial scarcity that makes every major move ripple throughout the league. When teams like Los Angeles start acting out of desperation, it often leads to overpayments that reset market expectations for similar players. This could benefit teams like Pittsburgh trying to move veterans, but hurt organizations like Toronto looking for value additions. The championship window reality check. Ultimately, all three franchises are grappling with the same fundamental question: how do you balance immediate championship aspirations with long-term organizational health? The Kings are betting everything on a veteran core that may already be past its prime. Nashville is second-guessing expensive commitments before they've even had a chance to develop chemistry. Toronto is trying to solve star power deficiencies through roster manipulation rather than talent acquisition. These aren't just hockey decisions, they're organizational philosophy statements that will define these franchises for the next decade. The pressure to win immediately is causing smart people to make questionable decisions, creating opportunities for patient organizations to capitalize on others. Desperation. The next few months will reveal whether these franchises have the courage to make difficult but necessary moves, or whether they'll continue trying to thread impossible needles that rarely result in championship success. What's your take on these brewing situations? Which franchise is in the most precarious position? And where do you see the first domino falling? Share your predictions in the comments below, and hit that like button if you're as fascinated as we are by this NHL soap opera that's just getting started.